Well, it is a particularly challenging World Economic Forum meet in Davos this year. There are multiple global challenges which are taking place. Challenges, for example, in the wars which are now taking place in Ukraine, which has been going on now for 2 years plus. Also in West Asia, there are challenging economic circumstances as well. To talk a little bit about that, but also about several other key themes that the WEF is looking at this year. Borge Brende, thank you very much for being with us. He is the president of the World Economic Forum. Thanks, sir, for speaking to us. The backdrop, the wars taking place. How is that a constant source of conversation over here? We've seen national security advisors meet on the sidelines as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So we had 80 national security advisors here in Davos yesterday, including the Indian one, looking at are there ways of ending the war in Ukraine, but then based on the UN Charter. It's not going to happen next week,
Right.
but I think it's incredibly important that we don't see further escalations of the wars that are ongoing. Ukraine, Gaza, and now we have a very difficult situation also in the Red Sea, as you know, with the Houthis' attack on all the ships that is passing through one of the most important shipping routes in the world, also bringing oil and goods to India.
Yes, absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit about that? One of the things that the WEF has done is you keep coming up with your own economic outlook. If the Red Sea becomes even more tense, if international trade flows continue to suffer, what sort of macroeconomic scenario are we looking at?
That would, of course, have a negative impact even on the forecast we made for this year. We think that the global economy will grow with 2.9% this year. This is the third year we have to reduce the forecast. We're more optimistic on 2025. But our all worry is that any of these geopolitical conflicts can escalate and spread. And if we see major wars, we see trading routes being interrupted, if we see the oil price going dramatically up, that will also have very negative impact on economic growth. And even a very strong growing economy as India, where we do think is going to grow with even more than 7% this year, if the oil prices spike and go up, of course, that's not good news. That's why we have to handle all these conflicts and also make sure that we revive global growth back to the level it used to be.
You know, this 2.9% figure, we'll talk about India in a moment, but it is a cause of major concern because, you know, we are out of the pandemic now, but the economic consequences of the pandemic remain. What are some of the key concerns economically that you see which are preventing a larger scale economic growth?
So far, it has been the sluggish growth in trade. So trade used to grow much faster than the global economy. Even when the global economy was growing around 3.8, trade was growing faster. Last year, we had 3% global growth and 0.8% trade growth. This year, we are expecting that trade will pick up, maybe even more than the global growth. Maybe trade 3%, the global growth around 2.9. So that is a positive thing. We also have to say that we were very worried about the recession in the U.S., the largest economy in the world, 25% of the global GDP. But it seems like the U.S. is going into a kind of soft landing that will have very positive implications. India is the fastest growing of the large economies. And also, it seems like China in the fourth quarter picked up a bit. So I think that the Chinese economy will grow maybe 5% this year. That will also, because of the size, is 20% of the global economy. It will also have positive impact on the other economies. So that's a win-win thinking.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about India, Mr. Brende. It is a global outlier in a sense. And the numbers, whether it's the World Bank, whether it's you or the IMF, continue to be very positive. Where do you see the India growth story?
So as I think I mentioned to you last time we met, I see it as a snowball.
Right.
The snowball effect. So if you look at one of the mountains behind there, you can start with a very small one, and if you then push it down and it starts to roll, it goes faster and it gets bigger and bigger.
Right.
So I think what India is seeing now is like exponential growth. So the Indian economy is around $3 trillion today. We do expect, if things continue with reforms, that there is also peace and no conflicts, and there is transparency, there is a fight against red tape, investments in R&D and infrastructure, we think the Indian economy can end up like a 10 trillion US dollar economy, maybe in a decade.
A decade or so. That's an important statement coming from you. What are some of the key drivers, do you believe, that we may see in the Indian economy, if you haven't seen already, which could actually push India up to that level? Which sectors?
So what is working in the interest of India today is that if you look at global trade, digital trade is today only 15%, but the digital trade grows twice as fast as the other trade areas like traditional goods. And China is the traditional goods producer, while India is the producer of services and digital trade and e-commerce. And also services is growing faster than goods. So India is positioned in areas where the demand grows faster than in other areas. So India is capitalizing on this. So of course, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Yep. India has to continue with the reforms that we have seen during the last years. They have to even intensify to become a 10 trillion US dollars economy. If it happens in 10 years or 15 years, it is just a fact that India is an incredibly successful economy for the time being.
You know, I noticed what you said earlier on. You said that, you know, for all of these predictions, there needs to be peace in the area. Are you concerned about tensions ongoing between India and China?
I think we're all following that very closely, the border. But I don't think there is any interest on either the Chinese or the Indian side to escalate that, because that would be extremely unfortunate. Mr.
Brende, one of the most interesting themes to me, and I think so many at WEF this year, is artificial intelligence and linked to economic opportunities. How would you respond to those who say that, no, 1 second, let's take a step back, we're going to be losing jobs because of AI?
Short term, maybe some jobs have to be pivoted. But overall, I think if you are not part of the AI and Internet of Things and big data and machine learning, you will lose competitiveness. We do expect that AI will increase global productivity with almost 30% in the coming decade. That means that jobs that are done by people today can be replaced by AI. But that is also the historic development. You know, in Switzerland here, 100 years ago, 95% of the population worked in the agriculture sector. Today it's 3% and they produce much more food. But all those farmers do have other jobs now that pay better. So they moved up in the value chain. That's why Switzerland is also so rich. So, for example, for India, of course, it will replace some jobs that are already there. But then you can move those people into higher productivity roles, and then you can increase also the welfare, and then you can also eradicate poverty. But short term, it can create some challenges, and people say, oh, it's killing my job. But, you know, if you can then not be in the back office, but you can then have a job that is better paid in the future, you have to also have good nerves to be successful.
Sustainable growth, another key theme. We've seen the outcomes of COP. There's a sense of hope, but then there is also the realization that people like to talk and whether they'd be actually able to deliver to ensure that we can keep global warming to under 1.5 degrees. How is that, again, a key theme at WEF this year?
It's critical because what we're seeing now is really climate change happening on the ground. Many countries we're seeing is having negative impact on food production, water, and livelihood. And I think India is one of those countries that really can feel this.
Yes.
The heat in the summer. There's more electricity now used globally on air conditioning than warming up houses. But we're not on track because last year we should have reduced the global emissions by 7%. Do you know that we increased them with 1.5%? So we really need to here also in Davos now discuss how to walk the talk, but because there is a lot of nice talk, but we really need companies, governments now to introduce the new technologies that can also enable this mitigation of greenhouse gases.
Is that perhaps the biggest problem that, you know, we've got the technologies already? Green hydrogen, for example, is very much the future, but to actually bring it down to a cost that works is problematic. Look at electric vehicles around the world. The cost of batteries is still very, very expensive. It's not mass use, at least not in many parts of the world. Is that your worry, the cost associated with sustainability?
It is. And there is like a green premium. And that green premium has to go away. We've seen it already on solar and wind. Solar used to be 10 times more expensive 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And today it's very competitive. But those breakthroughs have to happen also in other fields, like green hydrogen. We also know fusion nuclear. How to capture, at least as a bridge, CO2 from the air, or capture CO2 from coal-fired power plant and then inject it into reservoirs. So we cannot move from a fossil fuel-based society one day to a totally renewable one in another day. We need to build those bridges. And currently, there are very few bridges. The bridges are solar, it's wind, it's nuclear, it's a little bit carbon capture and storage, but it's far too expensive. So for the companies then capturing it, they pay too much of a price, and that's why you have to scale it up. It has to be the big investments in making these technologies then also feasible, like we did with solar.
One final question, and I can't let you go before you answer this. How would you respond to those who say that Davos is a talk shop for the rich and the powerful? How does it represent the interests of the large mass? How would you respond to that?
So my response is that what we lack today, and that's what we started with, is trust and cooperation. Most pressing challenges are transboundary, being climate change, being then cyber attacks, being future pandemics. And if you're going to deal with this, we have to talk. We also have to collaborate, beyond borders. And then we need to have business on board, civil society, governments. And I think there is no other place where all of them are gathered. And I think the spirit of Davos is that let's try to identify the areas where we can collaborate even in a fractured world. So that's what we try to deliver.
Wonderful, Mr. Brende. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Well, there you have it, Borge Brende speaking about so many issues, the macroeconomic situation, the wars taking place, artificial intelligence and employment, sustainability, and how the world really needs to come together, and conversations such as what we see over here at the WEF are absolutely critical.